Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host, and I am joined today by the amazing Dani Kimlinger. Super excited to have you on the show, my friend. I always think my guests do a much better job at introducing themselves than I do. So I'm going to let you take it away. And then we're going to dive into a really great conversation because I know you have so much to share with this audience.
Oh, that's so nice of you, Michelle. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dani Kimlinger, and I'm the CEO of Minds and Associates. I have the pleasure of working with Michelle in a couple of different capacities. And so I'm very passionate about the work that Michelle does for organizations and for Minds directly. So I'm honored and humbled to be here today. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was like the tiniest, littlest thumbnail sketch of your background. So I'm going to fill in a few gaps. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Minds and Associates is an EAP. And for those of you who don't know what an EAP is, which a lot of people don't, that is an employee assistance program. And I am fortunate enough to get to partner with that organization that Dani is now the CEO of. In fact, if you've read my book, and if you haven't, I really don't know why. If you go to the back, you'll see Dr. Robert Minds has given me an endorsement on the back. He was the founder of Minds and Associates, and I've been able to deliver trainings for them, for their clients for a number of years now. And it's one of the most amazing groups, teams of people to partner with. So it is a mutual affection.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll say just a few words about Minds. So yeah, our firm was founded almost 42 years ago next month by Robert Minds, and he's still involved in the firm. He serves as our chief psychology officer. So we have two divisions at Minds. We have our what we call our health psych division, which houses our employee assistance programs, our managed behavioral health care, and our behavioral health PPO network. And then we also do some ancillary services such as police psychology services, critical incident support debriefings, and staff on-site and near-site clinics. And then we have another division that houses our organizational psychology services. And we call that division our biz psych division. And that does training, HR investigations, coaching, personality assessments, all those kinds of things. And we provide services in all 50 states and internationally as well.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And you, Dani, are a big deal. I have been really excited to get to know a little more about you on a personal level over the last couple of years. And just seeing a lot of the things that have been posted on LinkedIn and celebrating all the accomplishments that you've made as a very young woman. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that, being a Titan 100 and just all of those things. And then we'll dive into the actual story of you and why you're passionate about all this.
Well, thanks, Michelle. It's true. And I know that you hear a lot of leaders say that it's the team that makes the organization who the organization is. In our case, that is 100% true. And I know that you believe it more so than the average person that might just hear it without working with us because you get the pleasure of working with our team. But yeah, the Titan 100, I think, is a reflection of our organization, our growth, our ability to touch more lives across the country. We are doing really impactful work on the health psych side as well as the organizational psychology side. And frankly, the acknowledgement is about the team. It is what they bring to the table. I get to learn from them, and I get to work with these amazing people every single day. And it really is, I count my lucky stars that I have the team that I do.
Well, I know that they are very appreciative of your leadership as well and stepping into this role when Dr. Mind stepped back a bit. So let us journey back and give us a little bit of just personal background information on you and your own personal health journey and how you've used your personal experiences to maybe translate and parlay into some of the things that you do professionally.
Sure. So, what's interesting, Michelle, is I was always a little bit shy about sharing my personal story till a couple of years ago. So I grew up in Evergreen, Colorado, and I was primarily raised by my father, and we were very poor. So my dad raised my brother and I on about $26,000 a year. So we were in that weird spot where we didn't quite qualify for public assistance at the time, but we also didn't have a lot of money. Also, growing up, I saw family members struggle with their lifestyle, with their health. My mom included, she passed away when she was 61 and due to lifestyle. And I watched not only my mom and a number of other family members, but even just last night, actually, one of my mom's first cousin, who we were hoping to see over the holiday break, also passed away due to lifestyle issues, specifically smoking and lung cancer, and actually continued to smoke all the way until she passed last night. So I think what's true is, watching the health journeys of my genetics and my family, I think really it was a catalyst for me and gave me sort of that spark to pay attention to my health and well-being. And even with that being said, Michelle, what's true is that I had a lot of slippage in my late 20s into early 30s. So I was traveling a lot, eating very unhealthy. I did work out. I've always been into working out. I was doing CrossFit and weightlifting and whatnot, but I was about 40 pounds overweight. And when I was 31, they tried to, Mines actually, when I became the CEO at 31 years old, they said, we need to get key person insurance on you. And I thought, sure, no problem. I mean, gosh, these other people that I work with are in their 60s. They have it. That should be no problem. Well, they did a full physical on me and I failed. I wasn't able to be insured by anyone. So I was completely denied insurance. And it was exactly the wake-up call that I needed to kickstart my health. So it'll be 5 years on January 1st that I launched into my New Year's resolution, which was running. And I chose running because I hated it. I didn't understand why anybody ran. Why do people run? How are they laughing? How are they having fun? How are they talking? How is this energizing and all to them? But what's true is it seemed like it held you accountable in a different way because you had to pay attention to your eating, your sleeping, your stretching, your drinking, your everything really revolved around the running. And then, so that's running is what sort of boosted my holistic health approach.
Well, I'm just going to do a little bit of math for context. You're at the time of this recording, which is December 2022, that puts you at about 36, 37-ish. Yes.
36. Yep.
Look at that. My University of Hawaii. Those math skills. Yay me. Let's go back just a little farther. You said,
Sure.
Due to lifestyle habits. So
Yes.
you were a product of that environment. So what lifestyle habits were happening when you were a youngster and the ones that maybe were starting to form in you? And, at what point did you shift? You said you used to do CrossFit, and was that, prior to this 40-pound weight gain, or was that part of the journey? Let's go back just a little farther.
Sure.
Because here's what I want everyone to hear is I'm going to submit that you at some point in that mid 20s, early 30s had the mentality of the YBI, young, beautiful, and invincible.
Yes.
I can do whatever I want and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody at 31 has key figure insurance? What is that?
Key person insurance. In case something passed away, in case something happens to me, I pass away, then the firm has insurance to hire another CEO, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that I would imagine is a much more involved level of, digging into you than anybody would normally get. And to get that at such a young age and to have that wake up call at such a young age, it's a big deal. So let's go and into that YBI mindset.
Yes.
What were those habits? What was that lifestyle that you were brought up in?
Sure. So growing up, my dad worked swing shifts. And so often my brother and I were kind of fending for ourselves with foods. We did a lot of processed food. I grew up in Evergreen, as I said. So there weren't a lot of different food, options to just that's like healthiest, quick, fast food place actually was where I worked. In high school, I worked at Subway, and that was the healthiest option you really could get. But what's true is that, we'd go home, make Hamburger Helper, one of us, or something like that. Just a lot of processed food, a lot of soda, not a lot of water, which I laugh about now because I make sure to drink my body weight in ounces every day as a minimum. But back then I can't tell you a time that I can actually remember myself drinking water in high school, let's say. Certainly we were physically active. I was always into hiking and, weightlifting and whatnot. Like I said, I was not a runner and did dance, color guard, those kinds of things in high school, but just was not, it was more of an activities kind of mindset versus a health and well-being mindset. So, back then, of course, my metabolism was a lot different. So I could eat all of that and still weigh, 100 plus ish pounds around there. Right. So then I got older. And when I started traveling, I was also vegetarian at the time. I had some mindsets I did bring with me from childhood. So as I said, grew up pretty poor. So certainly had the mindset that we don't want to waste food. So you go to some of these diners on the road and you get fettuccine Alfredo because you're a vegetarian with broccoli or something like that in it. And there's a bowl this big. Well, Michelle, tell you what, I'm going to eat that whole bowl. I will have no problem with it. Still don't. But now I have better self control than I did back then. So, because I didn't want to waste it. And I knew I wasn't going to have time to, I brought it back to the hotel, just sit in the fridge because I had another meal I needed to go out to dinner for. So I think those were some of the pieces. Sleep also was not something that I embraced until probably the last 5 or 6 years, where I'm pretty obsessed with sleep. I study my sleep score and how much I get my REM sleep versus deep sleep. Back then, not at all. In fact, in my 20s and 30s, early 30s, well, I left right around 29. I worked 2 full-time jobs, one of them being an overnight shift. So I would sleep a couple hours, a day and kind of go back to it. So just a lot of kind of pushing through and thinking that would work and that was sustainable, and it wasn't. And you know what's true though? I didn't feel like I was falling apart either. It really was the data that showed me that I was. And I mean, I feel better now. In fact, if you compared the me now at 36 to my 26-year-old self, I feel much younger, much healthier, much more energetic. But I didn't feel badly. I didn't think back then.
Right. And that's part of the problem is when you are young, beautiful, and invincible, you don't feel it. And so you
Mhm.
think that there's nothing wrong. You think there's nothing wrong going on inside.
Yeah.
And yet you don't know what's going on inside until you have a look under the hood.
Right.
And I would imagine that lab work and all of that physical and all of that, like, so it was a big eye opener. So when you say you failed, can you
Mhm.
you don't tell numbers, but specifically what were they looking at and what were the concerns that you were uninsurable? I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah, it was significant. So one factor was my weight. I remember this nurse came in and she said, okay, we're going to, she brought this like little scale out. I thought, yeah, I'm a few pounds heavier than I should be, but okay. And so I got on the scale, but that really wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was nearly all of my labs came back poorly, frankly. Everything from, cholesterol to, and remember, I was in my early 30s too. It's just, it's not good. Blood pressure. I mean, I think like most of the labs looked pretty poor. I'd also just had mono. I was 29 when I had mono. So I also had higher liver enzymes and whatnot. It was a mess. And I recall when I was informed that I was uninsurable, I was so embarrassed. I was so upset. I went through a whole grieving process. And you talk about the 5 stages of grief. I went through them about my health and well-being. And then I thought of my mom and how she had passed. I was 27 when she passed away. Just how it was a vicious cycle for her where she was overweight and she got type 2 diabetes. And then she kept eating sugar. And then she had all these cardiac issues. And then she couldn't really exercise. She couldn't even get up the stairs without oxygen. I mean, just all of that just kind of kept compounding. And I pictured myself and I said, well, if I'm here and I'm less than half of her age, I'm in big trouble. So I need to do something now.
Well, and because you are the incredibly intelligent and driven woman that you recognize that, right? You don't stick your head in the sand and think, oh, it'll all work out, or I'll take care of that later. And there was this pressure, obviously, because you're a big deal. It's a leader of a company. So there's kind of that added pressure as well. And so you start on this journey of running.
Mhm.
Let's talk about those very early days and what that looked
Sure.
like and felt like. And then at what point did prioritizing sleep and
Mhm.
figure out nutrition, like what were all of those steps that you ended up taking?
Yeah. So, just like most, brand new runners, I recall that I didn't know anything about running. So I remember I went to Ross and I bought these Skechers on sale and said, okay, great, I'm gonna start running. And I'm someone that when I jump into something, I have to kind of go full force. So I remember I found this running plan online. I don't even remember who wrote it, but it was like a 30-mile per week running plan. And it was impossible. I couldn't even run a mile. So I found a lake near my house. It was a 1 mile loop. And I said, okay, well, my goal, by next week is I'm going to run 1 mile without stopping. And it took me about 3 weeks actually to get there where I didn't have to stop and could run that mile. And I started getting shin splints. And I had a friend who's a very direct and blunt friend. She's also a running coach. And she said, you cannot wear Skechers like that. And, because they were not running shoes. The particular Skechers I had out were not running shoes. She said, go to a running store, have them assess your running, see where you pronate, and they'll make recommendations for shoes for you. So I did. I went to the running store and they told me about a run club. And I'm really social. I love running with people. That sounds like fun. And I said, I remember this gentleman's name was Joel. It was Runners Roost Lakewood, which ironically is the team that I'm on now. So that's where that full circle comes back. But walked in the store, he helped me pick out some shoes, and I said, I'm a brand new runner. And, I was really excited about my new shoes. And he said, hey, in 2 days we have a run club. You should come. And I said, gosh, I can't even run a mile. He said, that's okay. We have people that walk, just come. It's fun. It's very accepting, inclusive group. And I showed up and I was so nervous. And I had people that were willing to run and walk with me. And they recommended the Couch to 5K app. And I remember, and I was like, I'm not exactly coming from the couch. Okay. Like, I don't know if I need this 5K, this Couch to 5K app, but I tried it and I would skip the days kind of in between at first. And then once again, started getting a little bit of pain because my body wasn't used to running like that. And so I decided that I wanted to sign up for my first half marathon 6 months after I started running. So I set my sight on that goal and I did, it was Colfax was my first race. And I signed up for it. And the reason that I picked that distance was that I felt like if I did a 5K or 10K, I could walk part of it. But if I did a half marathon or above, it would cause me to have to focus on running. And then I would be accountable in a way that I hadn't been before. So I remember I bought the Hal Higdon plan, the beginner's plan, and jumped in and found a group to run with and did a couple of other little things along the way. Like they had me jump in and onto a Ragnar team, and, run clubs, that's the thing about them. They're potentiating. They'll get you going and all kinds of, signing up for things that you would never sign up for on your own. I think there's a reason they're at restaurants and, whatnot afterwards to get that going. So I did, I signed up for my first half and I completed it and I found that I really loved it. But I did notice a couple of tweaks along the way. So one was nutrition. Once again, being around a group of really inclusive and experienced runners, I was able to bounce ideas off of them and say, gosh, I'm hitting the wall here, or I'm feeling tired here, and I had my tracking device was much more limited than the one I have now. So I didn't have like the body battery or any of that stuff back then. So I couldn't really measure that, but it felt like recovery was harder for me. So I started incorporating things like drinking water, like much more regularly. And I'd become a bigger water drinker anyway in my mid-20s, but the ounce per body weight a day for me seemed like the perfect formula no matter what I was doing. Nutritionally, same thing. I felt like if I had more of what I call my anti-inflammatory mix, which, is my berries and my, peanut butter and stuff like that, that I would make it my smoothie after my run, and just felt like recovery went better for me, and just really focusing on clean eating and, just being really mindful of what you're putting in your body. And the sleep piece became really important as well for me, mostly because I was such a slow runner and I had to get my runs done in the morning. I didn't want to be exhausted. So that was kind of the early running days, Michelle.
Well, I love it. I think it's probably a story that resonates with a lot of people, right? Jump all in, except maybe the difference with you is a lot of people, they jump all in, it hurts, it doesn't work, and then they stop.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what I heard is support, accountability,
Mm-hmm.
guidance, and that you are open and willing to have all of that. And a lot of people are very resistant to that. They feel like they should be able to do it on their own, or they're so embarrassed because they can't run that far that they're not going to join a run club. So it holds them back from maybe involving themselves in something that would really, really be helpful. So where did this mindset of yours come? That is, I've been doing this for 25 years. It is not the norm that we willingly, openly accept help and guidance, but rather that normally we just kind of want to do it on our own and keep it a secret in case we fail and then nobody will know. So where did that mindset come from?
Well, it's interesting you say it, Michelle, because I do feel like going through my academic sort of world, like through my bachelor's, master's, and PhD, I had that mindset. But as a runner, I felt like joining the run club and seeing and just hearing the language and watching the different runners and being invited to, join for long runs on Saturdays or track workouts or whatever. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I would just show up and run. and learn, and then book recommendations and movie recommendations and all of that, I think I learned that, I have a lot I can learn here. And, there's just, so I think that I'd also started shifting professionally as well to a more of a vulnerability, openness mindset in my early 30s. So it actually, I think it was kind of a big like personal growth piece in general that was bigger than running. It was, professionally, I'm in a place, I'm a newer CEO earlier in my career. I need to learn from other CEOs. I am earlier in my running career, newer. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to learn from others. And it was silly because I really wanted to, my goal was, my 10-year anniversary running. I want to qualify for Boston. And that was my goal. And I actually qualified back in 2021, but that was the goal. And I knew I couldn't get there on my own because I knew where my pace was and I knew that I had a ways to go. So, I think that just being open and learning and then giving, it's not just taking either. I think that's the other important piece to drive home is, you're going to continue to move up, in whatever it is, running, professionally, et cetera. You're going to continue to learn and move up the ladder and in terms of your professional development and growth and personal development and growth. And so then you need to help others too and help them up and meet them where they are, just as other people met you where you were.
And I know you do that in so many capacities, which I want to make sure we touch on a little later. But I also want to go back just a little bit because you grew up very poor, a parent who worked swing shifts. So you, like you said, you and your brother fended for yourself a lot. And yet here you are, young 30s, a PhD, a CEO, very driven with her own personal health goals. Where did that come from? Because I think a lot of people end up being a product of their environment. And it feels like you are maybe the opposite of what your environment afforded you.
When I lived in Evergreen, I babysat for a lot of families that I had met through a fitness center, ironically, because I worked at a fitness center for about 5 years between, in high school and then in college as well. And so I met families there, babysat for them, and they tended to be more successful families. And I watched them and I said, oh my goodness. And I think one of the key pieces for me that I saw was that they were healthy, not just physically and mentally and financially, but just holistically. There was just this, they shined. And I thought, oh, see, this is possible. And so I think I built my building blocks accordingly and then surrounded myself and asked for help and just informational interviews. So even in high school, asking some of the families that I babysat for, like, how did you get here? What did you do? What did you focus on? What did you learn? What was your major? What is your exercise regime? Now, the exercise piece kind of took, because academically, I was really focused and driven and did well in college and graduate school. But I would say my exercise regime was not very strong. I would go to the gym and work out and stuff like that, but I didn't have like specific goals to be striving for. And I think that's part of where my mindset has helped me is having sort of, I'm kind of a goal driven person. And I see that personally and professionally. So I want to run my first marathon. I want to get under 4 hours. I want to qualify for Boston. How do I get there? Like, here's the goal. Let's work backwards. And the same thing actually with, personally too. I have a lot of personal goals. I want to be this person. I want to be more patient. How do I do that? I have to have my goals. Professionally, I want minds to, to grow internationally. How do we do that? I want minds to be here, by here. Like, how do we do that? So I think it's really the goal-minded aspect. And I think I heard that as kind of a common theme when I babysat for these families that they would share that they set their goals and then they put their plan together and they stuck to it. And practice makes perfect was kind of like it's a simplified mantra, I think, of what I heard, but there's truth to that. I think, it's just those little pieces help you grow and become a better person.
Well, and, to your point, you have to create the vision, the goal, the outcome. Otherwise, how do you know what you're striving for? I know what a lot of people do is they have a goal, but they don't take the time to set up the plan to get to the goal, right? They just kind of wing it. And that's how I used to go down that road. I'm going to try to do this or try to do that, or here's an outcome goal that I want. Except then time would go by and I'm like, oh, well, it didn't happen. I guess I failed. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until that big shift of, okay, everything I do is either going to get me to that goal or is going to prevent me from getting to that goal, and getting out of the all or nothing mindset and understanding that it's a process. It's the cumulative effect of all the things that we do. There's always learning that goes along with it if you choose to learn. Or you can say, oh, I failed, and then stop and not learn.
Right.
So, did that all or nothing mindset ever kind of hold you back? And at what point did maybe you really bust out of that to go through this process in sounds like almost every aspect of your life?
I don't know that I had the all or nothing mindset. I think that I realized where I was hitting my limits without getting some support in some capacity. So, for instance, I think that on my personal journey, I learned that I had some limitations and filters that hiring a therapist would really help me break through. I feel like, I was able to get under 4 hours in a marathon without a coach, but I felt like I knew and did everything I could possibly do on my own. So then I hired a coach to help me get that BQ. And we did. But I am still convinced to this day that I wouldn't have been able to just figure it out myself, because I think that that partnership and working together and being vulnerable and open to feedback and confronting, those limitations and opportunities for building yourself athletically was important. And same with, being a CEO as well. I have a CEO peer group that I work with as well, because there are so many opportunities for growth in every area of my life that I feel like I'm at the point now where I look for, people to help me get there. And it's not just like, coaches and therapists and stuff like that. I think it's also who you surround yourself with and who you spend time with. So it's interesting. I was actually thinking this last weekend about my group of friends, and I'm still friends with a lot of, people that maybe had, from college and whatnot, but we didn't have the healthiest like lifestyle back then. And maybe same in grad school. I don't spend as much time with them these days, just naturally. Nothing has happened. It's just where we are. And, if you look at like the people that I spend a lot of time with, they're all like, they really care about their health and well-being. They're driven in all areas of their life. And I feel like that's just kind of a natural way that I've sort of moved to.
Well, and I think even from your upbringing, you had that exposure to a different kind of life, and you took advantage of that exposure, right? You didn't just sit and wonder in awe and be embarrassed and not ask questions. You saw that as an opportunity for you to learn and maybe, glean a little bit of what's behind the curtain of this successful, healthy, happy life that these people seem to have. And I think a lot of people, you know, just keep themselves very narrow. And that's normal because that's like survival mode. This is what I am. This is what I
Mhm.
have. This is all I can be. And yet you are a testament to that willingness to open up and be vulnerable. Cause I'm sure it was vulnerable to ask questions of those people.
Mhm.
That especially as a teenager. I mean, gosh, I think about teenagers. I know a lot of them would never ask questions like that. Or to even have the awareness that you have limitations,
Mhm.
like you said, to confront them, to recognize there's a lot I don't know and guidance would help. This is something that when I'm doing corporate wellness trainings, I always will tell them, oh, you're not using your EAP. Why not? Well, because I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. Well, then the way you're going about it isn't working. And that
Mhm.
is what the EAP is for, to help
Right.
you. Or I know what I need to do. I don't need someone to tell me all the things I already know. Well, okay, but you actually have to do them.
Mhm.
And so maybe that person was there to help you be accountable. Maybe you think you know what you need to do, but there are things that you don't know that you also need to do. Or perhaps there are things you think you know you need to do. It turns out they're actually wrong.
Right.
And being open to that idea and accepting the guidance and the help, obviously is what will just help everybody's journey be a little quicker. Like you said, I'm willing to bet you would have gotten under 4 without a coach. It would have been a lot harder. And so let's just help ourselves by reaching out for help and finding that guidance. Let me ask you this. I know mental well-being is huge. It's a
Mhm.
lot of what Minds does. It's a lot about what I talk on. I know it's been a big aspect in your life. Has addressing yourself physically and keeping yourself physically healthier, getting there, how has that helped or changed your mental health as well?
It's such a great question. And this is one of those areas too that, the first couple of years that I was in my role, I didn't see any problems. I just felt like I'm learning and, yeah, the stress is normal. And, yeah, my waking up at all hours of the night, stressed and worried is just normal. I hear about this stuff. And I have to tell you, Michelle, I don't have many of those nights anymore. And I think it's because of the self-care piece. Not that, I mean, frankly, there's still stress, of course. But I think what's true is that I've noticed that as I started running and building, I noticed that I started also receiving more positive feedback from my colleagues about my leadership style, about myself as a colleague. I felt like I was thinking better, more clearly, more strategically. I'm more patient. And there's this element too. I run in the morning or lift in the morning most typically. And for me, especially if I'm doing a really challenging speed workout, I like to schedule those on days where I have something really hard to do at work that day, something really overwhelming. Speaking at a conference, I have this really big sales interview I'm really nervous about, something big. And the reason that I put those on the same days is that I can do this really hard workout and push through it. And psychologically, I feel like it's I did this really hard thing. Let me take on the world. I ate that frog this morning. Here I go. I'm ready for the day. I can do this. And I think that in addition to just the physiological impact that, the lifestyle change has made on me, I think, which no doubt, I mean, the research is pretty clear, right? As I read it now, which I didn't read it as much back then as I do now. I didn't listen to the same podcasts that back then that I do now. But, I mean, obviously physiologically you see changes. And so what I'm experiencing is seems like pretty textbook, but I see it every day and I plan accordingly. So, and it's really helpful. And I think I'm more in tune to when I'm most creative, most able to respond to difficult work style stuff. So I'm much better in the morning than I am in the afternoon and the evening. So I put all of my hard work in the morning and I get it done then. But if I have to do creative work in later afternoon, not my strong suit. So I try to plan that accordingly. And also when I'm running, I can't tell you how many ideas I've had from a business point of view. I've built business plans, I built presentations where I'll stop in the middle of my run and like write a quick note on my cell phone or something like that because it's helped so much. And then once again, I think that the diet, the sleep, the all of that is just now an everyday occurrence. It's hard to even remember and imagine what it was like to eat how I did before. So
Well, I love that you've gone through all this growth and awareness at a relatively young age. I mean, this is still early in the infancy of, your evolution as a human. And I know it's just going to set you up for so much more amazingness. I also get so much content done during my workout. So I always have my phone. I will dictate a note and then I just cut and paste when I get home. A lot of my writing is either while I'm out for a walk or I'm at the gym. I mean, I don't think enough can be overstated. The movement is medicine for everything. And it's something I teach and preach all the time. And I just hope people would truly start to embrace it, not as a chore, but as just some kind of medicine or just a part of the lifestyle or just the way to set you up for success for the day. How long after you started embracing these changes did you retest for that insurance policy?
So it was a couple of years. There was sort of a number of the carriers had kind of a wait period. Gosh, it was probably, I think it was in 2020 that it's like, yeah, I've had it for 2 years now. So we went through and we decided to apply again. And yeah, everything came back like beautifully. So I actually got like a preferred price even on the insurance, which was great. Also, though, like for the rest of my life, it's interesting because, you have to select if you've ever been denied insurance and explain why. And so, forever I'll have to do that, but it's okay. And I'm happy to, I always talk about it and disclose, what happened and, where I am now. Yeah, it was interesting because the only holdbacks for one of the carriers that I had to do a bunch of riders, I'm a rock climber as well. I hike over, I think, 10,000 foot mountains. I do 14ers and stuff like that. And there are those kinds of risk areas as well. But that was just, for me, it was a kind of a funny thing that was like a holdback. So I said, well, I'll take this holdback after the last ones that I had. So, yep. So, anyway, I'm insured now, which is great. And but for me, it was really symbolic to my journey and just where I was and where I am now. And so it was
I love
significant.
it. I love it. And that you are the face and the passion of what embracing the healthy lifestyle can do. because I think so many people don't fully think it works.
Yeah.
Or they don't think they can do it because it's too hard, or they can't afford to eat healthy, or they can't afford a gym, or they can't afford shoes. There's always an obstacle,
Right.
right? And yet, when I think about you grew up poor and yet you're drinking soda.
Hmm.
Hey,
I know.
water is free.
Right. Right.
Water is free, and yet
Yeah.
we're spending money on. And I'm not judging. I'm just
Yeah.
this is just some a fact being put out
Hmm.
there. So no matter your station in life, no matter your financial situation, you can do things that will be helpful for your human. And it's about finding those things and then building and building and adjusting a different mindset, looking for those opportunities. And then I think to your point, I definitely want to touch on this before we wrap up, is the giving back.
Hmm.
So I know the list is long, but I would love for you to share all the things that you were involved in and how you give back and what you do.
Yeah. So I think that, kind of more on the macro level, I think it's being involved in, different organizations, associations, nonprofits. And I'm involved in a fair number of those. So some of them include the American Obesity Association. That's been a fun one to be involved in. On the national board of directors there. And they're really targeting more school age kiddos. And that has been really fun to, especially coming from my previous experience, to watch and to see how they're working with kids and families there across the country. The Lockwood Foundation is also a near and dear to my heart organization. So they make adventure accessible. So organization actually brought the first wheelchair user to the top of the tallest mountain in Colorado. And that was in 2020. So that was just an incredible organization I volunteer there as well as serve on the board of directors, and it's just wonderful. And then I think, just a couple of other, organizations, state director of Colorado SHRM. So on the HR professional side, I think it's really important to gosh, HR is such an important role, especially in the work that we do, Michelle. My business partner, I was listening to a podcast that he was interviewed on, and he talked about how, employers save more lives than they get credit for. And I was just like, that is beautiful. That is so true, because we have so many of the resources and support, and we make health and well-being accessible as employers. And I just really loved that. And I think that it brought that point more importantly at home. And then ULAN, which is the United Labor Agency of Nevada. So we service underserved populations, food banks, diapers, resources, electricity, those kinds of things. So sit on the board there. And then a couple of state agencies, so CDPHE, I just joined a work group through them. And then the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment as well. We're working on the apprenticeship programs here in the state of Colorado, and that's just been also a lot of fun. But I think on the micro level, this is where it's really, I think, impactful for us all to think about just how do we make impacts, on sort of the micro scale. And I think it's doing things such as, going to a run club and, supporting someone who's getting into running, make them feel comfortable, make them have their first experience at a run club positive, be there with them. I love guiding blind runners. Actually, when I was injured, my very first big injury, which was I had a small peroneal tendon tear. So I was doing a lot of walking, and I had an opportunity to learn how to guide. And I was like, I want to do this. This is great. And, I think also just, we get LinkedIn requests all the time as professionals to just meet, to talk about, how did you get to where you are? And, what doors, should I be looking to have opened for me, and those kinds of things. Those are opportunities for us to support our community, support and grow. So I think you can do that, either through organized, organizations like being on a board of directors or something like that. But then also we can't minimize the impact that we have day to day, and supporting people that we interact with, and, take that 15-minute call and see how you can help someone.
Well, I think that is a beautiful note to end on. And I mean, you certainly have been always so generous with your time and your energy with me personally, as well as talking through professional things. And I feel so honored and grateful to have this connection and appreciate it. And for you to come on and share your story here, I know it's going to really trigger some things in people to get them thinking in different ways on a variety of different topics. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for the opportunity, and the feeling is mutual. Thank you.
Well, this has been a pleasure, as I knew it would be. So I love it when I'm right. I'm not going to lie. Thank you again. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I know you got a lot to absorb from what Dani had to say. And I know that you're going to go do it while you are continuing to be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.